Hi, my name is Chris, and today I'd like to talk about an idea from A Course in Miracles. The idea is about the nature of guilt and how it's the source of and true form of all problems that we experience in life. I'd like to discuss this in a bit more detail and explain why this is so. Guilt expresses itself in a number of different ways. Meaning, while guilt in the mind expresses itself in a million different ways through a million different problems forming in your life, in reality, all those problems, all those sources of suffering, are really different forms of guilt. So while guilt may vary in form and shape, ultimately guilt is one phenomenon. And that one phenomenon is the source of all your suffering. The reason guilt is suffering and causes suffering is because the mind believes that it's done something wrong and therefore needs to be punished. Since the experience of life is essentially internal to the mind can only attack itself if it believes that that attack is justified, and guilt is the justification of that attack. So in essence, guilt tells the mind a false message, that it's done something wrong and that it needs to be punished. The reason all guilt is false is because in reality each of us is inside our own mind and we are incapable of harming others. In other words, each of us is dreaming our own dream, having our own internal experience. And the physical world, a world that we seem to share, and a world in which we seem to be able to hurt each other, is an illusion. The relationships we have with people, the situations we find ourselves in the physical world, all these things are really happening inside our mind. Each of us individually is creating a dream that synchronizes with the other dreams going on so that it appears that there is a single world with its own reality, because we came here to have a experience that feels real. However, this is merely an illusion. In reality, we are all having an internal experience within our own mind, and if we suffer because we believe that we deserve to suffer. And that's the nature of guilt. In reality, we've never done anything that is technically wrong, either to ourselves or to others. So guilt, once it takes place in the mind, produces a number of illusions and misunderstandings. It's like a virus that gets into a computer system and creates not just one error, but a cascade of errors. Guilt by its very nature leads to externalization, meaning it tries to place the blame on external things, other people, situations we find ourselves in. These are the real causes of our suffering, according to our mind, under the influence of guilt. Guilt doesn't accept the blame for itself, but externalizes it, because guilt is attempting to delude you, because it is a delusion. The last thing it wants is for you to see it as it truly is. This can make it very difficult for you to have an experience of directly seeing your guilt in its true nature and recognizing its vast and sweeping influence upon your life. So as a result, guilt does tremendous harm to us and causes us all sorts of suffering, and at the same time encourages us to look for the solution to our problems externally where the solution cannot be found. Meanwhile, internally, we suffer from guilt, which is the true source of our problems, and which remains largely unaddressed. The Course is essentially an attempt to get at this true problem, this nature of our problems, and to overcome it. It's hard to overcome a delusion. The only way to do that is to build a true and alternate belief system, to come to understand and fully engage in that system of belief, which then allows us to see things differently. As long as we see with the influence of guilt in our mind, we're going to repeat the same delusion over and over again and be reinforcing it over and over again. We're already convinced of the reality of guilt. For that reason, no one can convince us that the physical world isn't real. Maybe intellectually we can accept the idea, but the bottom line is, day after day we expect to see the same world and we treat it as real because we have already given in to guilt. We have already bought into guilt's image of the world as a physical and real place. And we consider it kind of crazy to even question that. And yet, the Course does question it. But the bottom line is that guilt is also a way of thinking about other people and ourselves, which is a way of thinking fraught with all sorts of inconsistencies and errors and illogical elements, and is also unfair. If we examine guilt and realize the illogic of it, then we can come to understand that it is simply not true, and we can correct our thinking. Once guilt falls away, the illusions and delusions that come with it fall away as well. But how exactly do we overcome guilt? It seems very difficult to do. The reality of the world confronts us every single day, and it's difficult for us to look at the world and question it, much less to buy into a completely different way of seeing the world and interacting with it. One of the things we do is adjusting our state of thought, imagining ourselves as a higher level being, and perceiving reality from that level. From there, we can come to understand the nature of reality and begin to cast a light upon our own belief system to question it. I talk about this more in my videos about spirit. Those are easy enough practices to learn. However, the truth is, even after using those practices, we still come down day after day to our physical level and deal with physical problems and physical miseries and feel like we haven't conquered the problem of guilt itself. We need to be rooted in and established in guiltlessness. We need to live in it. We need to breathe it. It doesn't require any visualization. It doesn't require that kind of concentration. It doesn't require that we not think about physical things. What we need to do is to be established in guiltlessness. By establishing our mind in guiltlessness, it affects everything, all our perceptions, and we start to think differently. Now, maybe we don't immediately see the world as completely illusory, but as we progress, elements like blame, hatred, self-hatred, obvious guilt, and shame start to diminish. Positive feelings start to emerge, and we gain a sort of perspective on everything. This is the kind of transformation that we need to really make a new life for ourselves. And in order to do that, we need to make it a daily practice to establish ourselves in guiltlessness. This is a fairly easy practice to do. What I recommend is to repeat the idea slowly while thinking about it, maybe 20, 30, or 40 times. And ideally you want to do this perhaps twice or 3 times a day. Now 40 repetitions sounds like a lot, but in actuality that's probably only about 5 or 6 minutes of practice. The basic idea that you're repeating is, I am firmly established in guiltlessness. I am firmly established in guiltlessness. I am firmly established in guiltlessness. Repeat this over and over, as many times as you feel comfortable. Ideally, a minimum of 20 times, and hopefully as many as 40 times. And try to do this several times a day, throughout the day, at evenly spaced intervals, so that your whole day will be influenced. You will notice a marked improvement in your state of mind. You will notice the adjustment in your thinking, and it doesn't require visualization. Now, the bottom line is, we're crawling out of a hole of illusion, deception, pain, misunderstanding, grief, conflict, hate, fear, and so forth. But unfortunately, all these problems have one single cause, and that one single cause can be addressed. Guilt does not want us to address that cause, but we're doing it. You know, we can't help but examine free will at some point. In all of this, free will seems to be at the crux of the whole matter. Because it's the issue of free will that either justifies or removes the justification for all our anger. What I mean is that when we hate someone, when we're angry at someone, when we blame someone, what we're doing is essentially saying that they have free will, and that of their own free will they chose to do the wrong thing. They chose to hurt you or somebody else, or many people. They chose the wrong path out of their free will. Now, we've accepted free will as an idea. It's so deeply ingrained in us that it's part of who we are and what we think. It's part of everything. And it's especially a part of our guilt. Guilt in terms of the blame we place upon others, and guilt in the form of the blame that we place upon ourselves. It's part of all of that. Guilt hinges on the idea of free will. Therefore, we must eliminate that idea. By firmly establishing yourself in guiltlessness, you are also saying, I am not guilty. That person over there is not guilty. Those people over there are not guilty. Yes, they have done evil things. Yes, they've done cruel things. Yes, some of these people have done horrible things. And perhaps we ourselves have done bad things. But regardless, the truth is that we had no free will. We did not possess the free will. They did not possess the free will to be able to act differently, to be able to behave differently, to be able to choose differently. We do not possess free will. Every situation that arises, we react to it. We react to every situation that arises in the only way that we are capable of in that moment. We respond and respond and respond. But those responses are automatic. The idea of a conscious self, a self that chooses, a self that possesses free will, is an illusion. Because by the time we've done things, our mind has already done them before our conscious mind has really had a chance to intercede most of the time. We're responding and reacting. And our conscious identity is like an overlay. It's an image projected over what's happening in our head. It makes us feel more comfortable to think we have free will. But the truth is we don't. We're a string of reactions from birth to death, every moment, and all of those reactions are automatic. We may look back and justify what we did based on this or that, but ultimately that's an attempt to protect our sense of free will. But we are not free. We do not have free will. Other people do not have free will. Being established in guiltlessness will help us understand that idea and make it non-threatening. The absence of free will is not a bad thing. By recognizing it, we no longer have to hate. We no longer have to blame. We no longer have to judge. We understand that everyone is doing the only thing that they can do. And honestly, some people are so self-destructive that you have to acknowledge that their behavior makes no sense at any rational level. They would not choose that for themselves, and yet they choose it anyways. They do it anyways. So something other than conscious free will choice must be going on, because people behave so carelessly and self-destructively. It's because they're reacting, and that is how they're reacting to life as it presents itself to them. There's no free will. So practice this affirmation. Reinforce guiltlessness. Firmly establish yourself in guiltlessness. And everything you need to know about guiltlessness will come to you through you, rather than through a teacher. As you establish guiltlessness in your mind, other people will become your teacher, because you will see them differently. You'll see them in a healed way. You'll see them without guilt. And you'll see the healing impact that has not only on them, but on yourself. And you will understand that a lot of your presumptions about people were essentially false. The most important revelation that we can receive from accepting guiltlessness and the absence of free will is that it allows us to no longer see people as evil. No one is evil. People do evil. They do harmful things. But they themselves are not evil. And that means we are not evil. And we can rid that fear from our mind as well. We can stop hating ourselves. We can stop hating other people. And we can stop living under that dark shadow. I hope this practice is helpful for you. Good luck and best wishes.